Hi guys, this is Rachel from Rachel Reads, and I thought I would give you a quick update on what I have been reading between the end of May and the start of June. I have 7 books here to talk about today, so I'm going to try and make this nice and quick. It's not going to be a full review, it's just going to be a quick what I thought, do I recommend, do I not recommend. If you see me look down like this, that's just me looking at my computer checking my notes. Most of these books I have done an in-depth review on Goodread, so I will link those below. I think the only one that I did not do a review for is Big Little Lies, and I'll just talk about that a little bit more in detail. So I'm going to talk about the books just in the order that I read them in. I'll tell you how long it took me to finish them, what I thought, what I gave them, what I rated them, and so forth. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Big Little Lies by Liane Moriarty. So this was the first Liane Moriarty book that I purchased and that I read, and I bought this on recommendation from a fellow booktuber. I don't remember who it was. So I started reading Big Little Lies on May the 20th and I finished this on May the 21st, and I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. So if you have not read Big Little Lies or seen the new TV show, it is essentially about a group of women who are mothers and have children at Purewee Primary School in Sydney. So the book starts off with, you find out that there has been a murder, and so that's in the prologue. So we find out there's been a murder, and then the subsequent chapters start several months before, and we work up to the murder. So the 3 main characters are Madeline, Celeste, and Jane. So these are 3 different mothers who all have children starting kindergarten at Purewee Primary School. And we see how their friendship and their relationships with fellow school mums is quite complicated, and it's all about the events that led up to that murder, and you're constantly trying to guess who was killed and who did the killing. So this book does deal with some complicated issues such as domestic violence, bullying, and so forth. It was a good book. I thought it was a little bit slow at times. It took me a little bit to get into, and I didn't particularly like many of the characters. The only character that I probably did like was Madeline. I liked reading about her relationship with her husband and her children, and even how she dealt with her ex-husband. If you are looking for a chick litty sort of thriller, maybe give this one a go. If that's not your thing, then maybe give this one a miss. So that was Big Little Lies by Liane Moriarty. So the next book that I'm going to talk about is also by Liane Moriarty, and this is The Last Anniversary. I did not like this book, and I will preface this all by saying it. I did not like it at all. I gave it a 1 star on Goodreads. And that's just because I found it terribly dull and boring, and I just felt like nothing actually happened. It was 388 pages of nothingness. But just to give you a little bit of a background about what the story is about, we have a character called Sophie Honeywell, and she inherits a property from her ex-boyfriend's aunt, or great aunt, her ex-boyfriend's great aunt on a private family island. And she moves there. So part of the story is about her interacting with this family and getting involved in that family. And then the second part of the story is about the Munro baby. So the Munro baby is the child of what is believed to be Alice and Frank, I believe. Their child, so Alice and Frank are believed to have disappeared and left their child, who was then discovered by 2 sisters. And nobody knows what happened to these 2 people or why they left their child. So the story flips between, I thought this story was completely far-fetched. I mean, whose ex-boyfriend's great aunt leaves you a house? Like, come on. Like, it's just stupid. And like, all of the characters are conceited and vain. Like, there's no redeemable qualities about any of the characters. One of the characters has just had a child, and it talks about how she is struggling, and no one saw that she was struggling with postpartum depression, and how she eventually tries to commit suicide. So it does deal with some troubling issues to do with that, but beyond the tackling those issues, I don't think there was anything redeemable about this book. plot had holes, there was no characterization, the setting. Sorry if you can hear that, that's just my dog outside. So I do not recommend this book at all, and I bought 2 Liane Moriarty books since then. I'm not really sure why, because I've not loved either one of them. They're probably just a little bit too chiclety for me now, possibly when I'm looking for a thriller. The next book that I'm going to talk about is I Found You by Jewell. This book was incredible. I gave it 5 stars, 5 out of 5, and it just had me hooked. I started reading it on the 27th of May and I finished it on the 28th of May. And if you're looking just for a good thriller, suspense, mystery, this Jewell is your girl. Like, this was so good. It's the only book I've read by Jewell, but it will not be the last. I have not yet purchased any more, but I will be doing so. This was just really, really good. So there's 3 different parts to the book. We have told by 3 different characters. So we have Lily, who is a newlywed. Her husband has gone missing. So she's only been in the UK for about 2 weeks since she got back from her honeymoon, and her husband fails to come home from work one day. Then we have Alice. So Alice lives in the north of England on the beach, and she comes across a man who has no idea who he is. He has no memories whatsoever, and he has no idea how he got to this particular beach. And Alice ends up taking him into her home and taking care of him and trying to figure out who this man is and why he's come to Riding House Bay. And then lastly, we have a story that took place about 20 years previously. We have a brother and sister who are seemingly on an innocent family holiday, but something goes terribly wrong. And the story keeps hinting that these 3 parts are somehow going to come together and are somehow linked. And it's not as obvious as you would think. And it constantly kept me guessing. I did not pick out how this story was going to end until about 3/4 of the way through. I was very pleasantly surprised. It was a very good book, good suspense, good characterization, good setting, good plot, everything that you want in a good thriller. Definitely, if you're looking for a thriller, a mystery with, nice little romantic twist, give this one a go. So the next book that I read was Red Sparrow by Jason Matthews. I started reading this on the 28th of May and I finished it on the 2nd of June. It did take me a little bit longer than usual to read this book because it is so detailed. And that's not a bad thing. If you're reading this kind of spy novel, then you probably want that level of detail. I gave this story a 4 out of 5. I probably would have given it a 3 out of 5 up until about the halfway point. I wasn't enjoying it as much, but the second half of the book really caught me and I really enjoyed the story. So the reason I actually picked this up was because I remembered seeing the movie trailer. So if you haven't seen the trailer, go have a look. The movie has Jennifer Lawrence and I believe Joel Edgerton, and it is a classic spy movie based on the novel. So Red Sparrow is about a CIA operative called Nate, who is a Russian spy handler. So he is working out of the American embassy in Moscow, and he's handling somebody that works quite high up in the Russian government, and Nate is his handler. And this man, Marble, who is the spy, is stealing Russian secrets and giving them back to Nate to pass on to the CIA. We then have another character called Dominica, and she is a ballerina, but unfortunately she breaks her foot and is no longer able to dance. And she's recruited by her uncle to go and take a man out on a date. She interprets this as she needs to sleep with the man and get close to him. While she is sleeping with this man, he is brutally murdered while he is on top of her. So he's actually garroted, and she is she's deeply disturbed by this. Dominica is then taken to her uncle, and he says she's never to speak of this event. And he offers to give her a job as a secretary working for the Russian intelligence. She says she doesn't want to be a secretary. She wants to be a spy. And her uncle makes this happen. She goes to spy school. When she has finished spy school, her uncle has different ideas about what he wants, and he ends up sending her to Sparrow School. So Sparrow School is essentially a place where you go to learn to use sex as an espionage tool. So she goes to Sparrow School and she learns how to become a seductress. Eventually, the Russian government figures out what Nate is doing and that he has some sort of Russian spy. He's working with some sort of Russian spy, but they can't figure out who the spy is. So they send Dominica in to try and seduce him and to try and figure out who the spy is. That's as much as I'm going to talk about in terms of plot, but it was good. It was gripping. There are a lot of different twists and turns. There was torture, there was sex, there was romance, there was friendships. Like, this book really had everything that I would expect from a spy thriller. Not that I've read a lot, and I really enjoyed it. I will go and purchase the second 2 books in the series. However, I probably won't do this straight away, as it was really quite a taxing read. You really had to focus on the acronyms and the names, because quite often the Russian names sounded quite similar to me and I was getting a little bit confused trying to keep track of them. But I would definitely recommend this book if you're looking for a good spy thriller. It's very well written, and the author, Jason Matthews, was actually a CIA agent for several decades, so his knowledge is incredible, and you can see that in the writing. So really enjoyed that one. Okay, I've got 3 more. So the next book that I read is Pieces of Her by Karen Slaughter, and oh my god, how did I not figure out who Karen Slaughter was before now? How have I only just discovered her novels? It is crazy. I've since gone and bought 3 more of them because that was how much I enjoyed this book. So this is another thriller. I started reading this on the 3rd of June and I finished it on the 5th of June. And I'm just looking at some of the things that I wrote during my reading updates, and let me just share them with you. Okay, so on page 52, which is 11% of the way through the book, I said, "Oh my lord, first 2 chapters in and so much action." Page 129. I remember reading a review that called this book slow. I've only finished part 1. The whole section was full of action that never let up. I'm really enjoying it so far, even if the protagonist is slightly annoying. Next one. Really enjoying the twists and turns. And that was the last update I made. Like, the first 3 chapters were just so jam-packed, full of action, and they didn't stop. And it's probably the first book that I've read where it's just been go, 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 go. It wasn't until about halfway through the book that things really started to slow down, but that pace change, it made sense to me, and it kept that anticipation going, because I don't think you could enjoy a book that was just constantly go, 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 with stuff happening. It would be exhausting. But anyway, I love this book. I can't remember if I said, but I gave this a 4.5 out of 5. And the only reason I didn't give it a 5 out of 5 was because there wasn't a single character in this book that I liked. Not a single one. But anyway, I'll give you a bit of a rundown on the plot. So the story is about a girl called Andrea, or Andy, and she goes out for lunch for her 31st birthday with her mother. And when they're out for lunch at a cafe, there is a shooting, and her mother does something incredibly shocking to defend Andy, and Andy is shocked. She starts to wonder if she ever actually knew her mother and what her mother is actually capable of. That night, there is a further incident, and Andy ends up running for her life. And her mother gives her instructions about where to go and what to do. But Andy soon realizes that she does not know her mother at all. So then, from this point, we start to see 2 different stories. We start to see Andy's story trying to investigate who her mother actually is, and you know, what happened to her and where her mother learnt these unpredictable skills. And then we have the story 30 years previously, learning about Andy's mother, Laura, and her backstory, and has all of these terror elements. And Laura did some really horrible things. And the story comes together in a big reveal, and it was really, really very satisfying. Could not recommend this book enough. Please get your hands on it. I cannot wait to read more Karen Slaughter. Okay, last two. The next book that I read is The Dry by Jane Harper. I started reading this book on the 5th of June and I finished it on the 7th of June. And I gave this book a 5-star. It probably could have been a 4.5 or even a 4-star because there were parts that were quite slow. However, the ending was so good that I was like, nah, this has to be a 5-star book. It was the kind of book that when I put it down, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was thinking about this book for about 3 days, just trying to come to terms with the ending. Some of the first comments that I made when I was doing my little reading journal was that at the start was very slow paced, but I was intrigued and, you know, I wanted to keep reading. And my last entry was, whoa, the ending of this book. Whoa. That was my last thought. It was just, and that's how much I love this book. So I love the characters, I love the setting, I love the plot. There was nothing that I really didn't like about this story. And it is another thriller, it's another mystery. So it's about a character called Aaron Falk, and he is summoned essentially back to his childhood town, which he was run out of 20 years previously. So he's summoned there for his childhood best friend's funeral, along with the funeral of his wife and his son. So the family has died under mysterious circumstances. It is believed that Aaron's best friend Luke killed his wife and his son before turning the shotgun on himself, killing his entire family except for their young daughter. Except there is evidence to suggest that that may not have happened. And this is the story about who actually killed this family, who actually killed the Hadler family. Aaron does not intend to investigate the crime, the murders, but he is begged by Luke's family to have a look into their deaths and what happened. And as he starts to do this, he starts to work with the local police sergeant who has doubts about what happened as well. And these two men start to investigate the death, and they realize that there are some things that just really don't add up, and it becomes more and more unlikely that Luke actually killed his family. This is then paralleled with the story about why Aaron was run out of town. And it turns out that one of Aaron's childhood friends drowned when she was 16 under very mysterious circumstances. And for various reasons, Aaron and his father were caught up in this, and the town blamed them for this girl's death. And throughout the story, we learn about this girl, Allie's death, the Hadler family's death, and, you know, who actually killed these people? Was Allie's death a drowning? Was it an accident, or was she murdered? Did Luke actually kill his family, or were they murdered by somebody else? What actually happened? And both mysteries are tied up really nicely in a way that you would not suspect. I was completely shocked by both mysteries. I thought I had figured them out, but I was completely wrong. If you are looking for a good Australian thriller, give it a go. Like, you will not be disappointed. It was so good. The last book that I'm going to talk about is Call Me Evie by J.P. Pomare. So this is my most recent finished book. I started reading this on the 7th of June and I finished this on the 9th of June. I gave this book a 2 out of 5 star, and I was very close to giving it a 1 out of 5 star. Not because I hated the book, just because I didn't think it was particularly good. When I read the blurb of this book, I thought it sounded incredible. I wanted to read it. It was such a good idea, something that I'd never read before, but it was just not particularly well done. So the story starts with a girl called Evie in a cabin, and she is being held captive by a man named Jim. Now, Evie has no memories of what has happened. So Jim says he's hiding Evie to protect her because she did something bad back in Melbourne, but Evie has no memory of those events. And Evie starts to question if Jim is actually trying to keep her safe or if something more sinister is at play. So we soon find out that Evie is actually a girl called Kate, and Kate is a girl from Melbourne, a teenage girl, and something has happened. I'm not going to tell you what happened because we don't find that out straight away. So we slowly start to find out what happened through Kate's recollection. So it's told in two parts, before and after. So the before sections are the lead up to this event, which is mainly talking about Kate and her friends and her relationships and what starts to lead up to that event. And after is the events that are taking place in New Zealand while Jim is holding Kate or Evie captive, and Evie trying to piece back together her memories. It becomes apparent that Jim is not being honest with Kate, that he is manipulating her and manipulating her memories, but we cannot figure out why. So the premise is really good. The idea is really good, but it was so ridiculously slow. This book is almost 400 pages. It should have been a 300-page book maximum. It was so slow. There was just so much filled in there that just didn't need to be in there. None of the characters were relatable. They were quite frivolous and it didn't really make sense. The plot had so many holes in it. It just didn't make much sense. I remember thinking that, so we meet these characters in New Zealand who seem like they're helping Jim, but their motives are never explained to us. We have no idea why they're seemingly helping Jim and making it harder for Kate, making Kate's life harder. The lead up to the event are also quite, it's quite difficult to believe. And even the ending, I mean, I just didn't like this book. The only parts that I liked was this idea that memories can be changed and, that we can't always trust our memories. I liked that. That memories can be manipulated. And I also liked the relationship between Kate and her father. Otherwise, I did not enjoy this book at all and I do not recommend it. Anyway, so that is my 7 books, my update of the 7 books that I've read most recently. I hope you enjoy my update. If you have any questions about any of these books, please leave them below. If you have any recommendations for any books that I should be reading, please let me know as well. And if you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought down below. So please like and subscribe for further videos. Thank you and goodbye.